Thanks so much for joining us here on the CBN News Channel. I'm Ephraim Gray.
And I'm Charlene Israel. NSA leaker Edward Snowden is beginning to feel the long reach of the U.S. government. Today marks his 10th day hiding out in the Moscow airport, and it appears he's got nowhere to go. One by one, countries around the world are heeding the U.S. warning not to get involved. Edward Snowden is hitting some hurdles in his attempts to seek refuge outside of the U.S. Over the weekend, the NSA leaker applied for asylum in Russia. On Tuesday, he reportedly withdrew that request when he learned of President Vladimir Putin's terms. Snowden could only stay in the country if he stopped leaking U.S. secrets. The U.S. and Russia don't have an extradition treaty, but President Obama says high-level talks continue.
Mr. Snowden, we understand, has traveled there without a valid passport, without legal papers, and we are hopeful that the Russian government makes decisions based on the normal procedures regarding international travel and the normal interactions that law enforcement have.
Putin doesn't seem to be on the same page, saying he has no plans to turn Snowden over to the United States. WikiLeaks says Snowden's requests for asylum from several other countries have recently been denied, and Ecuador, his original destination, is beginning to distance itself, giving mixed signals about whether it will shelter him. In a statement attributed to Snowden on the WikiLeaks website, he blasted Obama, saying, "Although I am convicted of nothing, the United States has unilaterally revoked my passport, leaving me a stateless person without any judicial order. The administration now seeks to stop me exercising a basic right, a right that belongs to everybody, the right to seek asylum." Over the weekend, Snowden leaked that the U.S. has been eavesdropping on European Union offices in Washington and New York. President Obama says if he wants to know what U.S. allies are doing, he'll simply ask them. But European leaders are now demanding answers. President Obama said Monday the U.S. would provide allies with information about that report that the NSA had bugged EU offices. But he also suggested such activity by governments would hardly be unusual.
The killer wildfire in Arizona rages uncontrolled, 0% contained. The 19 elite firefighters who died battling the blaze were remembered in a heartbreaking memorial Monday. The men died Sunday afternoon when a wind-whipped wall of 20-foot flames suddenly trapped them in a tinderbox. Their emergency shelters were no match for the inferno. Most of the men were still in their 20s, dedicated to their families and their jobs.
Andrew Ashcraft, 29.
We celebrated their dad and the hero that he is and will always be, and he's an angel for us now.
My heart was breaking. I just can't even imagine how the families and the friends that knew these individuals feel.
Meanwhile, investigators from around the country have arrived in Arizona to try to figure out what caused this horrible tragedy.
President Obama wrapped up his trip to Africa today, honoring 11 Americans killed in an attack on the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania 15 years ago. Former President George Bush joined him for the ceremony. The two presidents laid a wreath at the memorial site. The attack was masterminded by Osama bin Laden. It also included a coordinated bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Kenya.
Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi says he will not step down despite an ultimatum by the Egyptian military to do so. The military says it will intervene in Egypt's political crisis if Morsi doesn't, quote, meet the people's demands. Protesters have stormed and burned the headquarters of the Muslim Brotherhood, and some worry that a civil war is possible. Chris Mitchell has the story.
Egyptian state TV broadcast the army's ultimatum. It read in part, if the people's demands are not achieved before the agreed period of time, then it is the duty of the military to announce a roadmap for the future. The anti-Morsi demonstrators welcomed the army's announcement.
We're very happy here. We never lost confidence in our army. We've always trusted that our army will be with us. We're very proud, we're very happy, we're very proud of the Egyptians. The Egyptians made us.
Morsi supporters fear the army is poised to take over.
It's clear that the army is planning a coup. The army must support the legitimacy of the president and the legitimacy of the constitution.
Since Sunday, millions of Egyptians have poured into the streets to demand Morsi leave office. One commentator called them the biggest mass demonstrations in human history. After 1 year in office, they say Morsi has put the goals of the Muslim Brotherhood ahead of the good of Egypt. Some say the current crisis puts the Muslim Brotherhood at a crossroads.
Next step for the Brotherhood is one of two choices, either to revert to violence and then they will suffer for the next, I don't know how many years for that decision, or just decide to keep it peaceful and respond to the people's demands. And then maybe we're looking forward for national reconciliation between all of us.
U.S. President Barack Obama, who is visiting several African nations, called for restraint and compromise on both sides. Yet many opposition members accuse the Obama administration of helping the Muslim Brotherhood come to power. What the army will do when the 48-hour ultimatum expires remains to be seen. Organizers of the mass demonstration say if Morsi does not step down, they'll intensify their campaign, including civil disobedience. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
A gay couple in Florida is the first to see immigration benefits approved following the Supreme Court ruling on same-sex marriage. A Bulgarian graduate student and his American partner were married in New York. Their marriage is still not recognized in Florida, but Friday, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services notified the men that their green card petition was approved and could eventually lead to citizenship.
It is a case of religious freedom versus gay rights. The trial of a flower shop owner in Richland, Washington is now underway. Baronelle Stutzman owns Arlene's Flowers. She's being sued by the state attorney general and a homosexual couple. Stutzman objected to providing flowers for a same-sex wedding because of her Christian faith. The state attorney general argues she discriminated. Stutzman's attorney says the case is not about discrimination, but about freedom of religion. Friday, the attorney asked the judge in the case to recuse himself because he knows one of the plaintiffs. But the judge said he would not step down.
The Becket Fund for Religious Liberty says the Obama administration's most recent modification of its birth control mandate is, quote, more of the same. The Becket Fund represents 8 religious employers in their cases against the mandate. More than 200 plaintiffs have filed 61 challenges to the portion of the health care law that forces employers to purchase birth control coverage for their employees. After faith-based groups objected, the administration pledged to compromise, but the Becket Fund says the latest plan is unlikely to satisfy their objections and the cases will have to be resolved in court.
Students at a San Diego public school will continue practicing yoga following a court order reinstating the practice. Parents who sued to see the yoga program removed from the school say it's promoting Eastern religions. The judge who ruled in the case says the school system removed the religious aspects from the exercises. He says it's simply a physical fitness program that helps to relieve stress. But the attorney representing the parents say it is a clear violation of the separation of church and state.
2,000 members of the Crystal Cathedral gathered for a final service in their famed glass house this weekend. The congregation has moved to its new location about a mile away. Financial troubles forced the megachurch, best known for its Hour of Power TV program, to sell the building to a Roman Catholic diocese in Orange County. Pastor Bobby Schuler, grandson of church founder Robert H. Schuler, says the spirit of the church will continue. The incoming Catholic congregation also held its first service in the building this weekend. The St. Callistus congregation will rename the church Christ Cathedral.
Well, this week marks the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg.
That's right. Thousands of Civil War buffs have been reenacting the battle, commemorating this pivotal event in American history. Caitlin Burke reports.
For this week, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania has reverted back to 1863. Sweat-soaked Union and Confederate soldiers can be found walking the streets, and the echo of muskets can be heard coming from the historic battlefield.
I've never been to anything like this before, you know, so this is my first real reenacting where we're actually firing the cannon and battling people, so it's been awesome.
It was really neat to see all the cannons go off and the guys pretending when they die.
More than 51,000 men lost their lives or were wounded in and around Gettysburg. On Sunday, the National Park Service held its commemoration ceremony, just 100 yards from the actual spot on the field where Pickett's charge was fought off.
Our programs are not a celebration. but rather a thoughtful commemoration of the people who were caught up in this cataclysmic confrontation.
Reenactments, celebrations, and other festivities will continue throughout the week in Gettysburg. More than 200,000 visitors are expected to come through the area over the 10-day anniversary period ending July 7th. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Coming up, they are the poorest of the poor, but an international Christian ministry is giving these Paraguayan children a chance for a better future.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes now.
Welcome back. A Christian girl who was accused of blasphemy for allegedly burning Islam's holy book is now living safely in Canada. The case focused international attention on Pakistan's harsh blasphemy laws. Her lawyer says Rimsha Masih left Pakistan with her parents, 3 sisters, and a brother on March 14th because of concerns for her life. The girl was arrested in August in Islamabad after a Muslim cleric accused her of burning the Quran. The cleric was later arrested for faking evidence, and the girl was acquitted.
Despite massive anti-government protests, Brazil's March for Jesus saw a huge turnout in Sao Paulo this weekend. Nearly 2 million evangelicals took to the streets to celebrate their faith. Church leaders suggest the massive response could be related to the protests that have shaken the country over the past 3 weeks. The Brazilian March for Jesus gathers more participants than gay pride parades and the Salvador Carnival.
In the arid Chaco of western Paraguay, indigenous tribes eke out a living raising livestock and cultivating small crops. But the children in one community are creating a better future for themselves and their families. Latin America correspondent Carolina Martinez has more.
Native people in this part of the Chaco had little access to education before 2001. Brazilian missionary Aurea Lobos has worked in Paraguay for 40 years.
It hurt me so much because I used to come here to the community center, and I noticed the indigenous people were being discriminated against. I was especially sad that they had no access to school.
That's what prompted the international Christian organization REACH, an acronym for Effective Aid to Children, to establish a school in Chaco, 200 miles from the capital, Asunción. Today, the school teaches 180 children, half of them boarding students. One serious problem they must overcome is the lack of water. The school has 5 16,000-gallon tanks, but that's not nearly enough when months go by without rain. So they have found that the best resource they have is prayer.
We had a prayer vigil once with all the kids, both boarders and day students. We did it with the whole community. By dawn, it was raining.
The REACH school not only helps children. 2 or 3 times a year, volunteer doctors and dentists, as well as nursing students, conduct site visits. For one day, the school becomes a hospital and pharmacy with free medicine for the whole community. One of the volunteers, soon to become a nurse, is a former REACH school student herself.
The only thing I can say is don't lose faith, and God will give you what you wish for. God answers prayer. I only asked him to give me a job, and he didn't just give me a job, but also the opportunity to study. He gave me more than what I asked for.
The children who come to this school often come from dysfunctional homes and are victims of domestic violence, sexual abuse, malnutrition, and lack of affection. In their community, the highest ambition for girls is to become pregnant at 14 and live as concubines. But at REACH, they find a new life and new values. They study the Word of God, which is not only transforming the children, but also their parents.
Change happens slowly, but every year we see how children mature. They're repeating the same things we told them. Girls say things like, "No, I'm not going to just live with a man. I'm going to study, finish college, have a career, and I will get married." They already have their mind set on something. They have goals for their lives.
It takes about $15,000 a month to maintain the Reach school, including the cost of food, education, and living expenses. Until 3 years ago, all those costs were covered by the Reach office in Spain. But because of the European economic crisis, they now only send $3,000 to $5,000 a month. The school could have to close its doors if it doesn't receive more financial support.
Education is the most important thing for our country to improve, especially if the children learn about God. So what I say to others is become child sponsors to give these children a chance to grow and have a future.
In Chaco, Paraguay, Carolina Martinez for CBN News.
Up next, a conversation with Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat. One of the risks dividing Jerusalem, the power of prayer for the holy city, and why he loves his job. Secretary of State John Kerry is in the Middle East trying to restart Middle East peace talks between the Palestinians and the Israelis. A major sticking point in any negotiation is the status of Jerusalem.
That's right. CBN's Scott Ross recently talked with Jerusalem Mayor Nir Barkat about the future of the Holy City and the difficulties of governing the most contested city in the world.
This may seem like a silly question. Why do you want this job? Because this is one of the most contentious cities in the entire world. You have all these issues surrounding you, and you want the job.
Well, somebody's got to do it, you know?
Yeah, right.
Well, I'll tell you, I think that Jerusalem has huge potential.
Yeah.
And when I, as a philanthropist and as a business entrepreneur, when I viewed some of the trends in the city, I realized the city is not exploiting its full potential. So I decided to retire. And ever since, in the last 11 years, I work for a shekel a year for the future of the city.
A shekel a year?
Yes, indeed. I love the city.
Yeah.
And for me, it's a life mission. And I feel that I'm in a very important mission to develop and create and bring Jerusalem to its potential for residents, for tourists, for entrepreneurs and business people. Make Jerusalem more attractive and fulfill its role.
More than just a religious city.
Well, the fundamental holiness of the city, the spiritualism of Jerusalem is the key to its uniqueness.
Right.
And also the fact that so many people care about the city. It is unique in many, many ways. There's nothing else like Jerusalem. So on top of that, you want to expand the experience. You want to make sure that the residents and the visitors also enjoy Jerusalem and make it more attractive from year to year.
Yesterday we were at Damascus Gate, and there was a lot of verbal contention over the dividing of the city. Pre-67, the city's back whole again. Do you want it to be divided again? Because there's a lot of talk.
You know, to better understand the DNA of Jerusalem, I'll take you back 3,500 years.
Okay.
When the people of Israel came to the land of Israel, the land was divided to the different 12 tribes. Each tribe had a piece of land, created their cities, way of life. We had the Holy Temple. And Jerusalem was not divided to tribes. Jerusalem was the only place that was not belonging to a specific tribe. And Jews and non-Jews alike, when they entered the gates of Jerusalem, they all felt a feeling of belonging, respect. The city has a role to play. It's the center of the world for all of the religious people, the monotheistic religions. And we have to maintain it like that. It cannot be divided. It will never function as a divided city. It has to be one physical city, enabling all to worship their faith their way, to respect each other, and there's room for all.
Can you convince Palestinians of that?
The Palestinian residents that live in Jerusalem understand that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm also a high-tech entrepreneur, a venture capitalist.
Yes.
It will never work. There's not one good example of a city that was split that ever functioned.
Right.
And unfortunately, Jerusalem did not function for 2,000 years when it moved from conquer to conquer until it was reunited. And now we have to make that model work better from year to year. And thank God, today you look at Jerusalem, its economy is going up very nicely. We're growing fast. The job numbers, the number of jobs created every year is doubled, and the last year is tripled than it was 5 years ago, from 5,000 to 10,000 to 17,000 last year. Crime rates, murder rates are dramatically gone down. We're 10% of an average American city in murders per capita, per every 100,000 people. And you see that the dynamics in the city are very, very positive. Look around us in the Middle East. Cities that are enemies of Israel, that want to destroy us, are falling apart.
Yeah.
And the ones that cooperate with Israel, the Israeli Arabs and the Arab residents of Jerusalem, the more cooperation there are with Israel and in Jerusalem, the better off everyone does.
One final quick question, I know you have to go. There are people praying for the peace of Jerusalem all over the world. Does it make a difference?
It makes a big difference. People that care about the city, that wants its success, help.
Yeah.
And that's the majority of the people around the world that understand that DNA. They understand that we, I as Mayor of Jerusalem and the government of Israel, respect them wherever they are. We will be happy to host you in Jerusalem peacefully so you can see and practice your own faith your way. Like the evangelical, the Catholics, all the Christian threads and thoughts. They're welcome to Jerusalem. Come and enjoy the city, go back home as an ambassador of peace. Pray for our city, pray for the unity of the city, pray for the openness of the city. Same with Muslims, same with, of course, Jews. When you care and you want to come peacefully to enjoy Jerusalem, you will do that and enjoy that.
May God be with you, sir.
Thank
you got
you,
it.
Thank you very much.
Finally today, NBC announces it will air a sequel to the hit miniseries The Bible.
The original 10-part miniseries had huge ratings, attracting an average of 10 million viewers per episode and more than 11 million for its finale on Easter Sunday. It was also the #1 new cable series of 2013. The working title for the sequel is AD Beyond the Bible. It will begin in the days after Jesus' betrayal and death. NBC's entertainment chairman says, quote, "What happened in the aftermath, which is essentially the beginning of Christianity, is utterly fascinating. Casting and air dates have yet to be announced."
I remember when it aired, Twitter was on fire. People were quoting the Bible. It was so refreshing.
I tell you, and it would send you back to the Bible to look and check. Is that how that went?
Following it line
Indeed.
upon line. I look forward to this, definitely. Well, that's going to do it for now on the CBN News channel. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
Hope you'll join us again right here next time. Have a wonderful day, everybody.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.